Welcome back to the Rundown. Well, ever since blowing up a terror infiltration tunnel dug under the Gaza border into Israeli territory in October, the Israeli military has been holding on to the bodies of 5 Palestinian militants killed in the blast. The purpose to use those bodies as leverage for a deal to gain back the remains of 2 Israeli soldiers held by Hamas in Gaza, along with 3 Israeli civilians being kept hostage there.
But today, Israel's highest court wading into the fray, ruling that the government is acting against international law by holding on to the Palestinian remains. The court says Israel must return them to Gaza unless, within 6 months, Parliament passes a new law to empower Israel to hold on to them. Here with us to look at what this means going forward on an extremely volatile issue, member of Fatah, Ahmed Ronem, and attorney and senior editor at Honest Reporting, Daniel Pomerantz. Thank you both very much for being here. Daniel, let me just start off with your reaction to this high court ruling on an issue that is extremely sensitive just inside Israeli society.
Well, it's important in Israel to follow the law. It's a country of laws, and if laws are being broken, they should be enforced by the court. But it's important to be clear, the court didn't actually rule that this violates international law, but that it violates Israeli law, and the law can be changed. It doesn't violate Israel's basic laws, which is like the Constitution. It simply violates the current existing Knesset-based laws, which can in turn be changed by the Knesset. And so they gave them 6 months to do that, and it appears that the Knesset probably will.
And Ahmed, do you think the Israel now is going to go ahead and change that law, or do you think that Israel has to return those bodies even without any kind of reciprocal gesture from Hamas?
First, Israel is detaining 10 bodies of martyrs, Palestinian martyrs, not 5. And
in other circumstances,
yes,
of course,
yes. And we believe that Israel have no rights to detain those martyrs' bodies. It's against the international law, against the Geneva Accord, and when we are talking about the law, this is the occupation law. It's
Hamas
not
is holding the bodies of 2 Israeli soldiers along with 3 Israeli civilians.
It's not clear. Hamas had not announced that they have soldiers which had been killed. They are talking about prisoners right till now. The picture are not, the view are not clear there, and you can't compare between Israel as a state and Hamas is not a state. According to the international law, Israel committed to the international law, and it had signed the international human rights announcement, which had been prevented Israel from those actions.
Can you respond to Ahmed on that point?
Yeah, the international law that's relevant here is what's called the First Additional Protocol to the Geneva Convention. It encourages countries to return bodies. However, it also points out that it has to be returned according to agreement between the various parties involved, the countries or the other actors. In this case, the agreement was being negotiated with respect to returning bodies that both parties were holding. Until an agreement gets negotiated, it doesn't fall under the purview of international law, but under the purview of the law of the states involved.
But Israel had announced that they are killed. Hamas had rejected that. There was no announcement from Hamas that they.
You do seem though to be drawing an equivalence.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like we're saying that Hamas is holding bodies but doesn't have to return them, but Israel is supposed to be held to a different standard of law?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the picture is not clear within Hamas.
So you're saying Hamas doesn't have those bodies?
I don't say that. The picture is not clear. Do you have, are you sure that Hamas had announced that they have bodies, Israeli bodies in their jails? Did they announce that?
I believe that after, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, that Hamas did publish videos, some called them propaganda videos, including the images of Hadar Golden and Oron Shaul, which were those 2 soldiers. Certainly, Hamas has made no secret of the attempt to kidnap and hold Israeli soldiers in the past, just like it did with Gilad Shalit for 5 years. I mean, we know this is part of Hamas's policy. The question is if it is okay for Hamas to hold the bodies of Israeli soldiers or civilians, but not okay for Israel to hold the bodies of Palestinian attackers.
Look, we are not talking about civilians. They are soldiers who had attacking Gaza.
I said soldiers and civilians.
Okay. But it's not clear. From my side, I can't believe I didn't have any information about the situations of the Israeli soldiers in Gaza. I have no information about that.
Hamas had not announced. Hamas
had not announced that they have bodies as hostages. They didn't announce that, so I can't.
Well, Hamas also hasn't denied it. And so as far as we know at this point, there are bodies being held by both parties, and there was a negotiation underway to make an exchange. It's also important to be clear that the Israeli law has two exceptions, that it can hold bodies or remains if those bodies are members of Hamas, or if those bodies are of people who were involved in an exceptional terror attack. The court ruled today that in this case it was not an exceptional terror attack, it was just people who happened to be in a tunnel, and apparently Israel has not been able to successfully prove at court that these were in fact members of Hamas.
Can I just say, Dana, do you agree, you're a lawyer, do you agree with the Supreme Court's ruling today? Do you think they acted wisely?
I think they do, and I'll tell you why. Israel is a country of laws, and neither the Prime Minister's office nor the IDF can simply violate existing Israeli law, which in this case says that unless you can prove one of those two exceptions, you can't hold on to the bodies. However, it is possible for Israel, as a country of laws, to amend its laws if the Knesset feels that that's necessary.
I believe that this is the law of the occupation. They have no right to amend this law because we, the Palestinians, are not recognizing the judicial occupation system, including the Supreme Court in Israel.
So are you against this ruling?
I am against the the judicial occupation system in all.
But in this case, Ahmed, I want to ask you, in this case, the Israeli Supreme Court is in effect saying Israel does not have the right to hold these bodies. Do you agree with that ruling or not?
But they ask the Israeli government to work for the amendment of the law.
But the ruling itself,
it's part of the decisions.
Sure,
so
but the first ruling that you cannot hold.
From my side, I am rejecting this. I am refusing to recognize the judicial occupation system in Israel. It's the occupation law. So I'm not
recognizing what Ahmed is saying, which is that he doesn't recognize the jurisdiction of Israel to make any decision in this matter. But without recognizing each party's jurisdiction in this matter, it's impossible to come to an agreement and make an actual exchange. And since Israel's actions don't actually violate international law, the only way to come to a resolution is by functioning through Israeli law.
No. Why to work according to the Israeli law? Why not to working according to the international law?
Well, according to the international law, according to the Geneva Accords, the Israeli government has control over this, according to the first additional protocol to the Geneva Accords. So either you work through the Israeli government law, which is what the Geneva Accords requires in this case, or you're functioning with no law at all. In which case, I don't know, I suppose Hamas law would govern.
Your final thoughts?
Not accepting to detonate the bodies of the martyrs. This is against clearly against the international law. It's against the human being. It's against the Geneva Accords.
Well, I completely understand what you're saying, but that's not what the international law actually, in fact, says.
Israel is acting according to its power, not according to the law.
I want just your final thoughts just to clarify. Is holding the bodies of Israeli soldiers and civilians equivalent or not to holding the bodies of Palestinians in Israel?
I can't compare between the two cases.
Is one okay and the other not in your eyes in law?
In my eyes, a human is a human. But soldiers who attacking any country supposed to put in his mind that maybe he will be hostages and
but we're not talking about
arrested
soldiers.
Or they are soldiers. Most of them soldiers.
Most of them. Not everybody who is held, who is being held in Gaza at the moment. But it's at the end of the day, almost another legal issue. It is seems to be an issue of definitions, which are obviously very different depending where you stand. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for weighing in here on The Rundown. We're going to go out for a quick break. Much more is coming up when we're back. Don't go anywhere.